Hi, I'm Angus,
I'm Anna.
and welcome back to Talking Politics. Now, this episode is a very special episode. It involves the local elections, the next election since the general elections in 2024. And because it's such a special episode, the producer Aidan, so the person who's usually behind the camera, is now going to be in the camera as a third host. So, where did we want to start?
I think first conversation topic has to be big news of the week. Council elections happened on Thursday. Polls opened and everything is in now from all different places.
Yeah, so we had over 1,000 council seats available to change over. Lots of gains for reform is basically the outlier. They gained 1,451 and gained 14 of the councils, 14 councils out of X amount that are available. The media would have you think that means reform now owns Britain, but I think we can all agree, having actually done some research, that it's possibly not the case. Um, the amount of council seats that were available does not in any way, shape, or form reflect the total amount that were available. In terms of the voting, you obviously see that Reform did very well compared to everyone else, but they only actually got 25, just slightly less than 25% of the total vote. And essentially, if you compare that to September last year, which was their peak popularity, it's actually declining. So, as much as people think that Reform now owns the world, as far as statistics go and voting habits go, it's not just as it seems. So, what do we make of that?
I think you're probably better informed to talk about the reform results. I'll just give a little breakdown of all the other results. So kind of what we're looking at the other parties at the moment. Labour suffered losses as predicted. So they managed to get 1,068 councillors, which is down 1,496, and they lost control of 38 councils. The Lib Dems kind of did, I think, you'd think as they were kind of expected to do, maybe a bit worse, a bit better. Nobody really knows.
The Lib Dems tend to do fairly well in these council elections, so a gain of 155 councillors and an extra actual council is going to be helpful to them, but it's nothing really to write home about.
Yeah.
A success, but not, you'd say, a major one for the Lib Dems.
Conservatives, we weren't expecting them to do particularly well either. They're kind of following the national trend of going on downhill. And the Greens did fairly well as well. They gained an extra 441 councillors, as well as gaining 5 extra councils. So
it's not just 5 extra councillors, that is 5 councillors. They had none before, they now have control of 5. So this is a massive win for the Green Party. Yeah. You also have to look at, they've got 2 new mayors as well. They won Mayor of Hackney and Lewisham.
So Reform now has control of 14 councils, which they didn't have before. And the Green Party now has control of 5 councils they didn't have before.
Yes. But Labour has still retained 28 councils, so they do still have the most councils of anybody.
And to be fair, a lot of those by far Labour strongholds, those weren't up for grabs this election time. As much as people would have you think that that's a general reflection of how the entire population thinks, if you just look at these local elections alone, it does look like Reform is setting the world on fire. But in the grand scheme of things, they now only control 10% of the total amount of councils. So in the grand scheme of things, as much as there is a certain push towards Reform in terms of these councils that are available, I think that it is perhaps wrong, and a lot of people seem to be saying that in general it means that the general election is already decided, but it doesn't, especially seen again through how they actually lost their count of the vote. So
they did, in fact, lose a share of the vote, and we mustn't forget these are local council elections. They're not indicative of the actual general electoral result that will be in 2029. You have to say, so only about 30% turnout in these council elections, so really very poor. So
poor in terms of general elections.
Well, it's good for a council election, but it's poor in terms of just general actual trying to take an opinion poll from this.
Yeah. What do you make of it?
So I'm going to go into a bit of detail. What this means for Labour, I feel, is that they're in a very difficult situation. They are losing votes both to Reform and to the Green Party. Yeah. So the Labour Party, I think, is in a very, very difficult spot right now because they're losing to votes to people more to the right, who they're losing a lot of what used to be the red wall. Many supported from that traditional red wall are now going to Reform, and many more of the left-wing voters are now going to Green Party. So I think Labour is finding it really challenging to appeal to the group of people they used to appeal to before. There are groups from both ends of the Labour spectrum that would now that are now leaving. Labour's in a difficult situation. They have to choose what they're going to do. Do they want to move more centre? Do they want to move more left? I mean, either way, they're still going to lose votes. But the issue is now they're losing too many votes to two parties that are on different ends of the spectrum. And I think that is a massive issue that Labour is facing right now.
Yeah, they don't have a clear opponent, do they?
Yeah.
They don't have, a specific opponent that they need to bash down in terms of this new five-party system that we have. They have multiple different people. The left vote is splitting and the right vote is splitting. And I think as much as it is indicative of perhaps a rocky start, an idealist might say about the Labour government, but I think in reality it's a lot to do with the fact that people want change. We have 14 years of Conservatives and then 2 years now of Labour government, and cost of living crisis doesn't seem to be getting better. The international situation seems to be getting worse and worse every single year. Fuels every few years, fuel seems to be going through the roof in terms of price. Gas prices seem to be going very, very high. The housing ladder is getting as worse as it is. Now we have introduced AI into the mix, which seems to be taking away jobs left, right, and centre from certain people. You see it within degrees at uni. There is a humongous shortage of people getting jobs out of an IT degree because their jobs were the first to go to AI. Now, as we discussed last week, there was the Chinese legislation that meant they could work alongside, but our country hasn't moved along with that, and Britain hasn't moved along with it. So we are still seeing a certain lack of increasing shortage of jobs. So yeah, people just really desperately need change, and both Reform and Green offer that. They offer a significant change from the way that things have been going, because in our country we've only ever had two parties, or one of the two parties be the leader of this country, and I think people are starting to look to their left and right.
I do think Starmer is slowly trying to move more towards trying to regain some of that Green vote now, I think.
Yeah.
We've seen since the election that he has announced new policies of nationalising steel. That's quite a left-wing policy, you'd say. Yeah. That's one that a lot of Green parties want. They want more nationalisation. And he's also announced the youth movement scheme through Europe, which will allow us more to go back to how it was when we were in the EU. Yeah. We can live, work and study for a year in Europe. So I think he is slowly trying to get away from the quite right-wing apologist, you'd say, he was before.
Yeah.
Into a more left-wing kind of view now, which I think is a lot of what more people voted for him.
Now, talking about the fallout from the council elections, and I'm quite happy we decided to do this episode today when there's been so much more information.
There's been so much coming out today.
Catherine West, so she's a Labour MP who decided that if Keir Starmer wasn't going to give a convincing speech on why he should remain the Prime Minister and why he should have that hold on power and how he's going to regain control after the council losses, she would put forward a leadership challenge towards him herself. That did not happen. Catherine West backed down during Starmer's speech on Monday, and that means that now, and I say this with a pinch of salt
very
right
much
now.
For now,
Starmer's job seems to just be a little bit more secure. I say a little bit more secure because this literally just like a couple hours ago, we had the Home Secretary calling for Starmer to set out a plan for his resignation. So he's starting to lose some of the support of cabinet members, which
collective responsibility is starting to run out, isn't it?
Yeah. And any A-level politics student would know that when cabinet members start turning on you, it
doesn't usually end well, does it?
There haven't been any major cabinet resignations yet, though, which is, I think, the key thing that Starmer will take as a positive from this. He's lost a couple of junior ministers, nobody of any note, really, though. He's still kept the support of his main cabinet. There's nobody resigned yet. There's not that just mass exodus that we saw with the Conservative governments.
But what's interesting is that after the cabinet meeting that happened this morning, normally a couple of people get interviews and stuff, and I think the big thing that some people have taken away from it is that Streeting stayed completely silent, refusing to answer questions, walking out the cabinet meeting. And for those of you who follow the government and are familiar with the cabinet, Streeting is potentially one of the biggest potential successors to Starmer if all goes downhill. So
certainly one of his biggest critics of past.
Yes. Which will be interesting. Aidan, do you have anything to say?
It's just I do fear that we are reading too much into him, just staying silent there. He's not come out against him. He's not come out for him either, but he supported him in the last time when he had that last speech that he had to make. So there's no indication that he has changed his mind. And until he says something concrete, I don't think we should overread into that.
Am I allowed to offer my kind of disagreements?
Of course.
So I do think Streeting is kind of reading the mood right now. I think the reason he's silent is because he potentially sees this as an opportunity. And, you know, he supported Starmer in his speech last time. There's been very little of that same support this time. He stayed silent, which to me shows that, Jesus, sorry for the voice crack, I think demonstrates that potentially Streeting is kind of reading the room and waiting for the right moment, especially with the Home Secretary already calling out for Starmer to set out a plan for resignation.
I do fear they know that none of them really have the popular support, though, to challenge.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to look back. Boris Johnson, when he made that challenge on Theresa May, he was a popular figure. He had public support. I don't think any of these Labour cabinet members do. I don't think Rayner does. I don't think Streeting does.
Yeah.
I think the only person you could look at and say who does have popular support is Andy Burnham, and obviously he can't challenge as he's still not an MP.
Which is what I find interesting, because a lot of the resignation plans that have been set out are for September. They're saying Starmer should be gone by September. As to whether a way of getting Andy Burnham back into Parliament will happen during that time, I am curious to see.
Yeah, I feel like the situation in Labour, in the past we haven't usually seen Labour been quick to get rid of their leaders. It's usually been the Tories that have been very quick to get rid of their leaders, as we obviously saw over the last 16 years. I think you're right. There hasn't been a quick outlining possibility of who would take over Starmer's job, and I feel like that's the reason why he hasn't had a major opponent yet. I feel like if or anybody had a particular mandate within their own party, I think they would have already attempted to challenge his leadership by now, don't you think?
Yeah.
I think that at this point, it's been far enough that nothing will happen now.
Really?
I don't think anything will happen now. Until Andy Burnham gets into Parliament, I don't think there will be a major leadership challenge.
I suspect someone might, quite close. I suspect within the next week, you know, it won't be a major challenge. Nobody will be calling for a vote, but people might be calling for his resignation. Someone high enough that they could then challenge to be his replacement.
I just don't see it happening personally. I think none of them have that popular support.
Yeah.
I don't think anything will happen whilst these cabinet ministers remain so unpopular.
The party seems to be divided, isn't it?
Yes.
In terms of who wants Starmer there and who wants Starmer gone.
And the thing is that the camp on who wants Starmer gone are also divided in who they want to replace Starmer.
Exactly, yeah.
The Streeting camp, there's the Rayner camp. They have all different people that they want to replace him. They're not united at all, so I don't think anything will particularly happen.
Yeah, nothing might particularly happen, but I think if anything were to happen, it could even be someone that we don't suspect. I mean, I think John Healey, there's a possibility. I truly think John Healey could potentially be an unexpected. I'm saying unexpected possibility because, of course, we have the big beasts at Rayner and Streeting, but potentially there's going to be someone who's less of a big beast who comes in and kind of surprising. As to what we're going to follow on next,
let's do Wales quickly.
We can
should we do the other countries?
Yep.
We can do the Wales and Scotland elections, so that's for
Can I do my bit
the Senate and
the Senate and Holyrood. So there were also the Welsh and Scottish Parliament elections over the weekend, and so we saw in Wales that Plaid Cymru managed to fairly convincingly win. They haven't quite got a majority in the Senate. They're up to 43 out of 96 seats, but it's a massive swing for them. They've completely replaced Labour, you'd say, as the main party in Wales.
Yes.
We also saw quite significant gains by Reform, particularly along the English border. They're up to 34 seats in the Senate now. Labour down all the way to 9, so really poor performance from them, especially given they're the most successful party ever in Wales.
I mean, you saw their leader literally like the day before most results came out actually accept defeat publicly and say we're not going to win.
Yes,
I think it's a dire situation for Labour.
I mean, from a massive majority first down to third is a very poor performance from them. And it's now Rhys Yorwerth in control of Wales, and I can't roll my R's.
So that's Wales.
That's Wales. Nationalist Plaid Cymru in charge. I don't think there'll be an independence vote yet, but it could happen in the future, I fear. I don't think it's too far off. I think it'll definitely happen in the future, but I don't see it happening this decade, I don't think.
And as for Scotland?
As for Scotland, Scottish Parliament elections happened again. And we actually saw SNP. They are still the largest party in Scotland, but they did lose 6 seats over there.
Yes, they did, actually.
Which is quite damaging, you'd say, for them, because they wanted here to get a majority. They want to be able to trigger another independence election, because you'd say the Scots, the SNP, they are much more bent on independence than the Welsh. A pretty big win for the Scottish Greens over there.
Yes.
Scottish Greens, separate to English and Welsh Greens, same party, different branch. They got 15 seats, so SNP and Scottish Greens, there is a pro-independence majority over there, but it's not all united behind one party.
Yeah. So that was the other elections. Should we talk about other news?
Can I go my little international segment?
Of course.
I love my little international segment, guys. So I think it is later this month we have the summit between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump. And this is a one to watch because the international order has been changing stupendously over the past recent kind of few years, and there's going to be so much that these two leaders are going to want to talk about. They're going to want to talk about Iran for starters, Taiwan. There's a consensus that Trump as a president generally has been less supportive of Taiwanese independence, so it'll be interesting to see notes on the leaders' disagreements or agreements there.
Yeah, it would be very interesting, especially with an unpredictable president.
And robotics. China is leading in robotics. I had the privilege of going back there myself recently. Generally speaking, the American consensus is that the Chinese are ripping off American tech, which will be a big focus for Trump. And of course, I think I said this already, Iran, because China's played quite a big role in trying to be a mediator in the conflict along with Pakistan.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how the developments of the conflict post meeting. And obviously, these are the two opposing big leaders. These are the two global superpowers in the world right now. And this is Trump. The last time a US president visited China was actually in Trump's last term in 2017.
Right.
So there's been not a lot of communication directly. What do you make of potentially what might come out of this?
I think, like I said, it's unpredictable. I hope that there can be some sort of semblance of peace across the whole planet. Not only diplomatic peace between the two of them, but certainly peace in Iran. I hope that they can achieve that. I think most people would appreciate there being some sort of peace in Iran. So I hope that is achieved. I hope that China can, again, be a mediator, not only in terms of Iran, but a mediator in terms of the national situation, in terms of trade and all that Trump's been doing with America. And I hope that it can rehash as much like what we hoped with King Charles's visit. I hope that it can rehash Trump's consideration of relations with foreign powers, such as Britain, for example. How Charles went over, and that people seem to think that that's now calmed down the situation between the two countries, that they can sort of work together now. I hope that a similar thing can happen with China.
I mean, we've talked a lot about what we hope is going to happen in this summit, but do we actually think any trade agreements, any peace deals are going to come out of it?
I don't think trade agreement or peace deals will come out of it, but I do think this is an opportunity for a reset of relations, maybe just a soft reset. I'm not talking total hard reset. What I'm hoping will come out of this summit is reduced tension between the two countries.
I think that has to be the end goal of it.
It
Just
has to be.
try and cool that down.
So I feel like with today's episode, there's not been much
We got any
positive news, negative news. It all depends on how you take it, I think.
Yeah.
All depends on, kind of what your political views are. There's wins for some, there's losses for others, but there's also, it's just kind of a mixed bag today. So I don't think we can really find any positive, negative news to finish on.
No, it's just general news. I mean, the things with politics is that one man's rubbish is another man's treasure. So however you take this news is depending on whether you think this week's good news or bad news, but not much certainly happened this week. Do you think?
Well, we've got to say that even if you are a Reform supporter, I don't think this week was as good for them as many of the people hoped it would be. They gained a fair amount of seats, yes, but they were predicted by some to be over 2,000, and they've fallen far, far short of 2,000. Yeah. They're down at 1496, I think it was. So yeah, it hasn't actually been as good for Reform as many people were expecting it to be.
Yes.
And they haven't been taking control of as many councils as people expected it to be. So overall, it's not been a particularly good week for anybody, regardless of where you stand on the political spectrum.
If you consider their aims coming into it, the predictions for Reform, it didn't go as well as they wanted. It went worse for Labour than they thought it would. It also went worse for No, they did think it would go slightly better.
They've kept themselves over 1,000 seats though, which I think was a goal for Labour.
But the goal into it was not to lose as many seats as they did.
Well, obviously, it's never good to lose seats, but they've kept a respectable amount. They're still in second. I don't think, given the situation Labour are in, I don't think they'll be too upset with their performance.
Out and out, they are the leading. They control the majority in the Commons. it's not a good result in the next local elections.
Incumbent governments often lose the council elections, though. They very rarely win these. So I don't think it's as bad for Labour as they were expecting. So.
I think we should have a special debate episode between our producer and the host, Angus. And on that note, thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you for watching and listening, guys. Please feel free to like and subscribe to the YouTube. That would really help us. If you know anybody that would appreciate watching this, or if you know anybody that would take good knowledge from this, the whole point of it is to improve awareness for the youth and improve political news being put out there, hopefully quite unbiased political news. So please send it to everyone, like and subscribe, join the Instagram. The Instagram is called Talk Politics for You. So if you can find it, that'd be great if you could follow. And so tune in next week. It'll either be Monday or Tuesday, depending on how schedules come. But yes, thank you for watching, guys, and we'll see you next week.